So we're talking to Jerry Kramer here about his hobby, his passion, and the generosity that he does for schools around here. Now, Jerry, I met you recently at Arts and Crafts over here in Bellingham, Washington, and we talked about guitars. And you surprised me by telling me you make guitars and ukuleles, correct?
Yes.
And how many have you made?
This is number 179. This is a 4-string bass, and it's set up with a 30-inch scale length. The neck was carved from a piece of maple from a friend that I bought back in 2012 when we were in Ottawa. The innards I buy from a company called MGB Guitars out of Florida. I had a hard time finding the black strings. I ended up having to have a friend of mine buy 2 sets, and then he made some similar kinds of strings for me. But it's all electric, runs on, of course, all kinds of different things, but the little amplifier I use is really fun to work with because it has the capacity to do Wi-Fi. And so I can plug the transmitter in here and the receiver into the amp, and away she goes.
Now, black strings, why are they so hard to find?
Well, I really don't know, because I found fluorescent strings here in town, and I've seen different colored strings via Amazon and Diodorio and an outfit in Maine called Just Strings. Oh, we don't have any black strings. And it was interesting to finally figure out how to do it. Had to buy 2 sets of regular guitar strings and take the lower 3 strings off of 2 sets to get them together.
And you have pickups on it. What kind of pickups do you have?
This is what's called a ghost pickup. It's mounted inside the box itself, and they're wound in Austria. And the fellow that I buy them from down in Florida, he called me here about a month ago. He said, "Jerry, I'm sad to tell you, we aren't going to be able to get any more of those pickups that you like." He said, "We have about a dozen here in stock, but after that, we're going to have them made someplace else." So I was sad to hear that, because for years I would call this guy on the phone or send him an email, and he was really good about responding right away, and within 3 weeks I'd have the parts I needed. It was really great.
Now, you talked about the long neck. Is it unnaturally long for a guitar?
For a bass, this is what's actually a short scale. Most basses are 34, 36 inch. This is only a 30-inch scale. So it's pretty small, which makes it really nice to play. And this one weighs just a fuzz over 10 pounds. Most basses weigh around 14 pounds. And if you're lucky enough to find a Kramer bass, they're about 16 pounds. But they have aluminum necks, and they are so rare. I had one for a long time, and I gave it to my grandson, who cherishes that thing.
Now, you have a beautiful cigar box. But not only is it a cigar box, but you have decorations on it. Do you put them on yourself?
Yes. Yeah, I buy these from a fellow in Malaysia who actually makes them. And they come natural color, then I have to paint them black or whatever. But it's an interesting hobby, because I really think that roots music is where we should be looking. Okay, so this is for sale. It's $200, okay? My grandson has my Kramer bass, and I'm sure I'll never get it back. And 4 years ago, I paid $1,800 for it. So these things are affordable, and they're playable. They're really an amazing extension of art and music together. And speaking of odd things, one of the latest things that I've done is I've started collecting tin cans, because, well, why not? So I'm going to set this one down for a second, and I pick up my latest prototype.
Will you be able to play that for us later on?
Sure. This little rascal is called a Spam Joe.
A Spam Joe,
Spam.
Spamjo,
Yes,
just like banjo.
yes. And it has one string, and it has a diatonic scale, so it has no wrong notes on it. And I sold probably a dozen of these things, but I wanted something a little fancier. So I bought really nice looking vintage tins. And last year when I did a sale, I brought 4 along with me, and I came home with orders for 4 more. So people are really looking for something that is unique, and these guys definitely are unique. The fact that you have to, by the way, this was a piece of frame of a bed rail, and of course the Spam can. So in terms of things that it takes to make it, I bought the fret wire, I bought the string, and I bought the little single tuner up here. But the stick and the Spam can actually were just found, and that's one of the tenets of roots music. You use found items, things that don't necessarily lend themselves to making noise or sound. But this has a great little tune, and
Now, they were called diddley bows
yes,
in the Deep South, correct? And they
That
would
is
put a
correct.
broom string on the side of a building with a couple of nails
That
and
is
a can.
true.
Now, did you get into that because you have roots in the Deep South?
No, I don't have roots in the Deep South. I do play mountain dulcimer, auto harp, and ukulele. And when I was in North Carolina in 2006, I ran into a fellow who was trying to get things going with roots music. And he had a small website, and since it's just really taken off. Scott Ainsley is his name, and he tours the country visiting schools and different school districts, teaching about roots music. Where did the blues come from? And all those kinds of things that make so much sense to learn about, and the students get just really inspired.
I like what you said you do. You give guitars to the kids at the schools, correct?
Yes. Yeah, I made 64 of them. And part of the fun of that whole thing is finding the bits and pieces. The ones that I made for the school, I did use cigar boxes for the resonators. The necks were made out of 2x6s that I took and cut. I could get 6 out of a single 2x6. The tuners I bought from MGB Guitars down in Florida again. And a friend of mine who has a 3D printer printed the fretboards for me. And so they have a chromatic scale. They're 24 inches long, and the strings, I experimented with several different styles. I finally ended up using 100-pound and 150-pound fishing line. And the teacher was a little concerned. She says, well, I don't know if that's going to work or not. And I said, well, Bonnie, here's one for you to try. A couple of days later, she calls me. She says, how many more of these do you have? I said, well, I've got quite a few. She said, do you have 60 by chance? I said, I have 64. She goes, you're kidding me. I said, no. I said, I'll bring them over tomorrow. And so every January, I go to Parkview Elementary, and I teach a class on roots music, beginning of the rock and roll era, and I give these kids a chance to try something completely different. Of course, there are several students who show up who have no musical ability at all, but this is a chance for them to try. And I ran into a little guy a couple of weeks ago. I was in the checkout line at Hagen's, and this little guy come up behind me and he goes, hi, Grandpa Jerry. And it was so cute. His mother was standing right there, and she got the biggest kick out of it. I said, "Are you still playing your chugger, two-stringer guitar?" He goes, "Yes." He said, "My friends want one." I said, "Well, maybe we can see them in January at Parkview Elementary."
Excellent story. Now you were talking about scales, a diatonic scale, and what's the other one?
Chromatic.
Is there a difference?
Yes, this is a diatonic scale, and you notice that the frets are not evenly spaced. This is the scale that you and I were taught when we were in grade school, the do-re-mi scale. And because of that, there's no wrong notes in this particular scale. And people say, "Well, what do you mean there's no wrong notes?" I said, "You can place your finger any place on this fretboard and it'll make a sound that is pleasing." "Really?" I said, "Yes." I said, comparing that to the chromatic scale, like on this bass, you can see that the spacing is very, 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 going from very large to very small as the tones get higher. And by golly, there are lots of wrong notes in a chromatic scale. So that's one reason that I want the kids to be successful. I don't want them to have to worry about this and that and the other thing. And be able to play on a neck with fishing line. I don't have to worry about them hurting their hands or fingers. And the parents actually appreciate it because they're not very loud.
Now, can you plug most of your instruments in?
Yes. Yeah, I try to make most of them electric in case I needed to do a demonstration in a large venue. And that makes it so much easier for everyone to hear. When you have a two-string 24-inch scale cigar box, you don't get a lot of noise. But you get 25 of them or 30 of them in a classroom, they make a lot of racket.
So we're talking to Jerry Kramer about his passion, his art, and his guitars. Now, that cigar box is very big.
Yes.
How big were the cigars that were in it?
They were huge. They were Churchills, so they were about 1 1/8 inches in diameter, and they were almost 10 inches long. They were gigantic.
It would last for a while then.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's an all-dayer.
That's great. Do you smoke cigars?
No, sir.
Okay. I mean, it's beautiful to see these things, and show me some more. You have some more right here? Oh, before we do that, can you play us a song, please?
Sure. So this little guy, a diddly bow, a spamjo if you wish, this is an old Irish tune called Whiskey Before Breakfast.
Whiskey Before Breakfast.
Whiskey Before Breakfast, yeah.
That's a good song.
Good song. Of course, being Irish, they are all about that kind of stuff. But if you play that song in a church, it's called Raisins in Your Oatmeal. Same song, same speed, and when you play Raisins in Your Oatmeal, they know that they have to get out their wallet because that's part of the offertory.
Give me one.